with my Hello Kitty Island Universe passcode. All right. See, for those of you who haven't come to any of the hackathons, this is the stuff that happens there. You should. I mean, you could, with your fellow computer science classmates, we could be singing Backstreet Boys in 3 in the morning.
Or we could pile 4 people on your lap.
That's right.
Yeah.
You'd have creepy pictures of.
Then we just have doctors sitting in the background, just like staring at the camera, all creepy.
That was
Like
funny.
every picture that he's been in, his look,
He's always like that, just the guy in the back.
staring at the camera.
It's awesome.
So, I encourage you to get involved in the future. Those are fun events.
Can I just
When's the next one?
Next time?
What's this?
When's the next hackathon?
I'm assuming, well, the next one is Los Angeles in February, but I think some of us are going. But do you have the date for Hackathon? So post that on Slack. I'll organize a trip there.
Are you going to come?
Yeah.
February 19th to 21st.
Yeah, I'll go to Hack Illinois.
You can't compete, though.
No, but so I can be a mentor or something.
I'm game.
All right. So let's pick up where we left off and kind of finish our application here. So let's see what we got so far. And then we want to expand our application to kind of the next step. All right, so right now we have, this is a table view here, but there's nothing filled into it, right? So right now we click add roll. It lets us choose from the different dice. I click on that guy. It brings me here, and I think I have it printing out that, well, I don't have it printing out, but I think we're setting a singleton, right? We're setting a singleton with the number of sides. All right, then I'm going to select the quantity. So let's say 8. I'll do add roll. Now this is the guy that then needs to take us back. So this is kind of where we ended up. All right, so if I hit add roll, is that when it prints something? Nope. All right, so that last page is the quantity select. All right. Okay, yeah, I didn't write a picture yet for that, or a picture, an action rather for that. Okay, so right now we have our picker items, but we need to be able to set our global num dice or whatever we called it. So we have something called a
Dice roller core.
dice roller core. Dice roller core keeps track of 2 variables, a num dice and a num sides and a num dice. When we're on that screen, num side should already be set. That should be set inside of our dice select screen inside of did select whatever at index path. So there's that guy right there. Dice roller core.num sides is equal to self.size at row index. So that's where we're setting that global variable there. Then we're taking us to our push controller, our quantity select screen. That's this guy. So now we need to have a variable that updates that quantity variable. We need a function that updates that quantity variable. So we're going to have to build an IB action associated with the event, the action with our picker. So let's go back into our, here, I was like minimizing that. That way I don't look there. There, perfect, okay. So here's our picker here right here, and we notice that a picker has a selector associated with it. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I need to hook that up to my code. I think that'll let me do an action in here, right? All right. Yeah, we'll just put it right there before awake with context. So we'll call this guy a picker did change. So this, go back into that guy. Now we see we have a new function here, picker did change, that has an integer that comes into it, and we're going to go ahead and call it, what is our dice roller core dot num dice is equal to picker did change, and what it shows us is the index that was selected. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. So our minimum is a 1, so we need to take the index value plus 1. If the index was 0, it should be a 1. If the index was 1, it should be a 2, so on and so forth. Oh. Yeah, why did I put picker did change there?
I don't know.
This is just value plus 1.
You also
Alright.
put a semicolon there.
No, whatever. Semicolons aren't illegal. They're just frowned upon. Okay, so now we have our picker did change set up. So as that guy is, as he's changing, here we'll just go ahead and print in here. So let's print value. And we'll see the kind of values that value prints out. Add roll, D6. Just scroll through that a little bit. Go over here. We see that we have a whole bunch of things printed out. The very first one, oh, it printed out a 1. Actually, hold on. Did it print out a 1 to begin with? No, it's a 0. 0 to begin with. All right, so what we probably want to do then is when we first come to this screen, just so we don't accidentally have a dice roller core set at -1, we probably want to go ahead and initialize dice roller core's num sides to 0. All right, or we can just set it to 0 here for num sides, or num dice rather, num dice. So we can do that. We'll start it off at 0. All right, and num sides, doesn't matter if it's -1 or not. We're not going to use it unless it actually has a value in it. So for all, we can just say 0, 0 for both of those. All right, so now we know that our num dice is getting selected there. All right, so now do we have a button on that screen yet? After our picker, yeah, we have a button called add roll, and what we want add roll to do is we want it to go back to our first screen and ultimately show up that new roll there, right? Okay, so let's go ahead and let's click add roll and make it go back to that first screen. So we're going to do this. We're going to do that.
In terms of working with Xcode, having dual monitors or one of these big monitors is nice.
Oh, hold on. I don't want the action. I want the selector. So there's this, and we're going to call this add roll button pressed. And we'll connect that. So here's our add roll button pressed, and what we want to do is we want to let's say self.pop to root controller, and that should take us all the way back to the main controller, right? So let's just make sure that happens. So at this point, we know that our two global guys are set. All right, if we're on this screen, we know that they're set to something. Okay. Actually, we're not 100% positive at this point in time. What we probably want to do down here in awake with context is we're going to go ahead and set this guy to 1. The default value for on the screen, because if you don't touch that picker, this function will never get called.
Just with one dice. So.
Yep. So we can either do that there or set the default as 1. So we kind of have a choice, I suppose. Let's just set the default to 1. All right. We need to make sure we reset those. In fact, let's just write a little function in here. Static func reset values. And this guy will say num dice is equal to 0, num size is equal to 1. Okay, so we'll have a function in there that we can call.
You mean, don't you want that the other way around, num dice equal to 1?
Yeah, I do. I want it to match what was up there, so let's put them in the same order too. All right, so now we can easily just call the reset values function after we're done using them, and they'll reset to whatever we've deemed to be the starting values. Okay? That way, if we change what our starting values are going to be here, we can just change them real quick here. And as long as everybody else uses reset values, it'll always go back to our defaults.
So every time you hit add roll, just call reset value.
Okay, but let's make sure we get back first. So now we have add roll button pressed. We're going to pop to the root view controller. Right now, we're not going to do anything. Let's go into the root view controller. Do we call this main screen? So this is main screen. So now I'm going to come in here. We're going to say print I'm about to activate. We want to see when that prints out. So this is part of that interface controller lifecycle. Okay. Awake with context, will activate, did activate. So we're going to see that will activate is called right at the beginning before I even touch anything. There's the initial call to that guy. All right, and in that call, we need to recognize that, well, we're going to see in a second, but at this point, we don't have any roles to add to our table view, correct? All right, but the next time we come back here, we probably will. So now I'm going to add a roll. We'll pick a number of sides, pick a number of dice, click add roll. We came back here, and I'm about to activate again. So what I need to do there is I need to actually set my new dice. Does that make sense? All right, so what we're going to do here is inside of our dice roller core, we want to create an array of dice objects. Make sense? Well, in order to do that, we need to have a dice object first. So I'm going to create a dice object, or well, maybe I should call it a roll object. A roll object is a number of dice and a kind of dice for right now. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to create another file. This guy's going to be a watch kit class. He's going to be of type NSObject. And we're going to call this guy a roll. All right, so we'll create him. And what's a roll going to be? A roll is going to keep track of a couple of pieces of information. We're going to keep track of, for right now, a number of sides and a number of dice. All right, so we're going to have a var num sides is an int, and we're going to have a var quantity is an int, and then we'll have our constructor that'll take in a num sides int and a quantity int. Well, actually, I want quantity first, so like 2d6 type thing. So let's do quantity as an int, and then num sides as an int, and we'll say self.numSides is equal to numSides, and self.quantity is equal to quantity. All right, so that'll initialize. There we go. All right, so now we have a simple little roll object that we can throw our two pieces of information into. Make sense? All right, so now what we'll do is inside of our dice roller core, we're going to create another variable. We're going to have an array of roll objects that this guy's going to maintain. Whatever's in that roll objects array is what we want to ultimately show in our table view of the first screen, our main screen. All right, so we're going to have a static var, let's call it the rolls, and this guy is going to be a roll array that we can add some stuff to, right? Okay. Now, what we should do here is how do we know when we get to that will activate? How do we know that we actually have a dice in here? Something we need to add. If I'm looking at those variables, how can I tell? Because will activate got called twice here, right? Got called the very first time when we haven't added any additional rolls. And then it got called a second time when we actually had come back to the screen after adding a role. How can we ask the question, is there a new role that I have to add to the roles? If I'm looking at these two variables, how do I know that a new role has been created?
They've changed from the default values.
If num sides is not 0,
Yeah.
how about that one? Pretty good check. Okay, if num sides is not 0, that means that somebody has gone through the process of selecting something, correct?
We have events that essentially bubble up when.
Not now. So this is a relatively ghetto approach to this. Okay, num dice could be 1. So actually, we should, for the sake of this question, set both of these to -1 here, knowing num sides will get changed, and also knowing that num dice should get changed. And where should it get changed? Inside here, when we come to that last screen, that picker screen.
Well, do you even need num dice or do you even need to check against num dice? Because num dice can be 1. The only thing, I mean, you have a 0 value you can check against.
Well, the problem is that we're doing this in a navigation controller. So after they select their number of dice, they could hit back.
Oh, that's true. Okay.
And get back to that main screen, which will call it to activate again.
Okay.
So we need to have a way of, oh, you know what? This will be a better way of doing it. This will be a better way. That way we don't need to break the logic we already put in here. Keep the averages like that, or the defaults like that. We're going to say static var has dice is equal to false. So we'll just create a Boolean up there, and then what we'll do is we'll switch that to true. Well, we'll switch it to true when we hit our button on the last page to add roll. All right, and then we'll also want to make sure we reset it here. So has dice is equal to false in there. And then what we'll do back here in our quantity select screen is when we hit the roll button, before we pop to the root view controller, we're going to say dice roller core dot, what did I call it?
Reset.
No, what did I call the name of that variable?
Oh, you got to save it or it won't pull over.
Just build that real quick. Go here. Has dice is equal to true.
Yeah.
So I will let the core know that there is a dice built there. Okay, I wouldn't be on this screen if somebody hadn't selected the number of sides, and I wouldn't be hitting this button unless they've agreed to at least, even if they didn't touch the picker, to leave the quantity at 1. Make sense? So upon hitting that add roll button, we'll say we have marked the current state of those variables as being a new dice that needs to get added.
Would you even have to do that? I mean,
yes.
You can do it either way. No, in the add roll button press, couldn't you do it in the awake with context on that page or the will activate on that page? Because every time it goes to the picker.
No, because they could still hit back. If they're on that picker page, it's still part of the navigation controller. They could navigate back. So we're doing this only when they have committed to adding a new button.
Okay.
Or committed to adding that new role.
Okay.
All right, so now, back on the main screen, when we are activating right here, now we can ask the question, if dice roller core dot has dice, if that's true, then we need to rebuild our table. Before we rebuild our table, we need to add the new dice, or add the new roll to our array of rolls. Okay, so we're going to say dice roller core dot the rolls dot append, and what we're going to append there is a roll object with a quantity of dice roller core dot num dice and a number of sides of dice roller core dot num sides. So we'll go ahead and add that dice or that roll to our array of rolls. Make sense? Okay, and then we want to go ahead and rebuild our table. Okay, and well, at this point we haven't even built a table, but we're going to build a table, right? So we're going to rebuild our table. So let's go ahead and let's just create a quick little function here. Func gen table.
Sounds slightly inappropriate.
Does it? Really? That's that phrasing?
Say it out loud.
I'm saying it out loud in my head.
It's like it's close.
It's
but
close, yeah.
Generate table.
There's something wrong with us.
So I'll just go ahead and steal our stuff from our, let's just do this. Just grab this stuff. We're in main screen. So we'll throw that code inside of gen table. Well, first of all, we need to give ourselves access to that table, which we don't currently have. So we need to have an IB outlet up here. So I'm going to go ahead and grab. We'll just paste it in there. Hold on. Table example. So we'll grab that outlet code. We could do this by just dragging it, but we'll. There's that. So our outlet code's now in there. And now before we forget, let's go ahead and hook up the outlet. There we go. So we're on our main storyboard here, this guy, and we need to hook up the outlet. Here's the table, and we'll drag it to our table. So now we have access to the table. And have we already set this guy to be one of those rowy deals? Oh no, we do that on the other side. All right. So we'll go back into main screen. Let's hide this. So number of rows is going to be in, well, actually no, we do need to name, it. Hold on. Let's make sure we named him cell out there. Yeah, he's named cell. All right. Go back into main. So we're going to set the number of rows for our table. And what should the number of rows be? The number of rows is going to be the number of rolls in our array, right? So that's dice roller core dot the rolls dot count. So the number of rows we're going to have in here is one row for each of our rolls. And each of the rows is going to be represented by our, did we decide we're going to use that same cell for both? Or are we using a different cell in here?
I think we're using the same.
Using the same cell? What does this guy have? This guy has an image and a label. I don't know if we want to have an image.
No, I did two labels.
Yeah, I'm going to do a roll. We're gonna create a different cell.
See, that's what I asked last time, and you said that you could use the same thing.
You absolutely can.
Oh.
Yeah, there's not a law that says we can't. I'm just saying that what I want to store, and I'm actually thinking ahead to what your next step is going to be. What I'm going to store in that first page is going to be ultimately two pieces of information. Something that'll say like 2d6, and then something next to it that might say the name of that guy. This is my damage roll, something like that. So kind of dump the idea of a picture and instead let's use it for information. So it's kind of productivity.
Well, you could use
But in terms of Swift and Xcode programming, there's nothing that says we can't reuse that object for multiple table rows. It's completely legit.
You could use a picture and put like a sword in there and a shield.
Yeah, we absolutely could. All right, so let's just go ahead. I'm going to create something called a dice. Let's just call it a roll. I actually already have roll, don't I?
Yeah.
A roll. So, wait, hold on. This guy has two outlets. A roll row. All right, it's legit enough. So let's create a new file. This guy will be an NS object. And I guess are we fixing our naming convention, or are we sticking with rows have a lowercase letter naming convention? So roll row.
No, we should just do capital R, lowercase o, capital L, lowercase.
Just all alternate? Okay, yeah. All right, so we'll do that. So we'll match our dice row. So we have roll row. And here, if we want this to be, what I'll do here, I'm going to create a new group in here. And we're going to call this table rows. And I'm just going to drag those guys in there. So there's my table rows. So I can hide them in there if I want. Then I want to have my new group, just organizing here. Singletons. And we'll move our dice roller core into that. And then let's have one for our code behinds. So we'll just do this for our new one. So this is going to be main screen is the code behind for that interface controller. Dice select is the code behind for that. Quantity select is the code behind for that. And then let's have new group, support objects, and we'll put roll in there. All right.
So much more room for activity.
All right, so certainly not a required thing, just from an organizational perspective for us. Maybe do something like this. All right. Okay, so we are generating our table. We are going to, the row type is going to be cell, but our let's count with row type. Go back out here. Right now that's this guy. The row controller, we named him cell. Where do we attach it to our row name? Here, I'm going to create another group here real quick. Example stuff. That's that guy. That's that guy. That's that guy. And then we'll hide that. All right, good enough. So we want to be in our main screen now. So we'll set our tables, number of rows equal to the number of rows in our array with a row type cell. Then we're going to go through each of these guys. We'll let the cur row equal the row controller at index as, and we want this guy as a roll row. Right? Okay, so we're going to grab a roll row from this guy, and then we'll set current row. What does our roll row look like? Looks like nothing right now. Let's steal. No, I'm actually not going to. Well, yeah, we're going to have labels. We steal a couple labels here. So we'll call this guy
Dice label. Or num dice label.
yeah, for right now we'll just do num dice and num sides. Or yeah, num sides and quantity. So let's do sides label and then a quantity label. But we're going to be adding in something else if we're going to put a label on this guy. All right. So there's that. All right, so now we got to go back out to our interface. And we need to go into our row. And we need to tell this guy that he is actually an instance of row. All right. And then we're going to throw a couple labels on there. So first of all, does this guy already have a group associated with him? I don't remember. Yeah, he does. He does. He's got his own group. So we'll throw a label in here. And we're going to set this label relative to container. Let's just make it 50-50, 0.5 for that guy. And then I'm going to copy him and paste another one. Perfect. And then let's set the height relative to the container. Set the height relative to the container. All right, so there's our labels. So we'll just put it in kind of an example dealy thing here. So maybe this guy says, actually maybe this is like 4, and this guy will be D6, something like that. That might be what it looks like for our little simple example now. Okay, so now we want to go up here. Actually, we want to click on cell. Go to his outlets. Quantity label is going to be hooked to that guy. Sides label is going to be hooked to this guy. Okay, so that's how those guys will get set up. So now, as we are going through our thing to build our table inside of our main, okay, so cur row is going to come in as a role row. Then we're going to say, let's actually just get rid of these things here. So then we're going to say cur row dot, what is it called? Quantity label dot set text is going to be dice roller core dot the rolls at bucket I dot quantity. Okay, but we need to make that into a string. So now he's a string. Similarly, we'll do this for our, what is it? Sides label. And this is num sides, but we'll throw a D before that guy. D6, D8, D10, D12, whatever.
Gotta remember to throw the D before.
Okay, so we'll go through. So our generate table function sets our table to be the number of rows currently in our the roles array. Then it goes through, builds each of those rows, adds them into our array there. All right, then they should show up on the screen. So we need to make sure in will activate, after we added a role to that guy, we need to rebuild our table. So we'll say self.generate table, and that should rebuild it for us. Okay. Now, after we've added this role, though, I need to also say dice roller core.reset values to kind of put it back in its starting position so I can add another dice roll. So when we come back to will activate, if we have a new dice, go ahead and add that dice to our rolls, then reset the singleton's values, then regenerate our table. Go ahead and run this. So we'll add a roll. Let's do a D6. Let's do 10 of them. Add roll. There's our 10D6. Add roll. Let's do a D20. Let's make it 12 of them. Add roll. There's our 12D20. So on and so forth. Let's add a couple more and make sure it scrolls. D100. Let's just test it without doing it. Okay, good. Add roll. Perfect. Okay, so what we probably want to do is well, do we? I'm thinking we want our table to scroll independently of the button. Well, yeah, like I want to be able to scroll down here, but have my add roll button to remain. Yeah, I believe so. So let's
That's
go.
what I
You
did
need a
on
done so
mine.
button too, otherwise you're just stuck in that menu.
Huh?
Get away out of that menu.
Get away out of what menu?
Menu you just had.
That's page 1.
Yeah, the roll button will be.
Okay.
Yeah, that's. I mean, if we're gonna have a previous page, you're right. But that's where we come into.
Well,
That's
you don't
beginning
need
of
to go
app.
back. You can go forward, but you still need a way to get there.
Yeah, we.
Add dice button.
Yeah, you do add roll.
Yeah, but then how do you roll the dice?
Oh,
Roll button.
yeah, you'll click one of these guys to roll the dice.
You got rid of the roll button.
I understand what you're saying though. Like you could certainly have added a roll button and
Right.
selected one of these guys. Yeah, we haven't gotten there yet. Let me fix the group here real quick. What was I doing? I was doing something. Fixing the group. Storyboard. Okay, so this is our main screen. So we have our add roll. So what I want to do is I want to create a. Oh, wait a minute. So
I think it's because you have the table outside of the
Yeah,
group.
the table's not in a group. It's
So,
Right.
outside.
So we need to put another group in here
And then throw the table.
and then put the table inside that
There
group.
you go.
See if this looks right now.
Should you change the group to vertical? I don't know if that makes a difference.
I only have one widget in there.
Alright. Weird. You did that too.
I think maybe if do I have to take the other guy out of the group?
That could do it.
I want this guy to kind of be fixed. Can I move him out of the group? Dump this group. Will he be fixed now? Suppose it doesn't necessarily matter for right now. Well, scrolling the whole screen.
I suppose that would only matter more if you had a roll button. Because then you would lose your roll button at the top. And
Right. But there is a way to do it. So let's go ahead and throw that guy in that group so they all fit together.
don't you want to change that group to vertical? Because you have two elements.
Yep. Okay. So we'll leave it for right now. All right. So now something else we want to be able to do here is, well, we're going to have to do our role, but I want you to augment your application for next class. So I need to show you something first before we finish this part of it. And that's called NSUserdefaults. All right. So it would be nice if we're building roles for us to remember them between launches in the application, right? Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go into my main screen. And I'm going to do this. We'll just do it in awake from with context right now because I want you to learn how to use this. I'm going to teach you a generic way of using NSUserdefaults. Then you're going to have to apply it to the problem that we're solving here. Okay? So what I'm going to do here is we're going to get, let's just do let prefs equal NSUserdefaults dot, is it? Common defaults?
Can you just bind it to a variable?
NSUserdefaults is for this. That's
So you can just bind it to some variable, and whenever that variable updates, it automatically saves it?
that's what NSUserdefaults is. I just need, there's a function that gives you the defaults.
You don't have to save it every time you update it.
Correct.
Binds it.
Just escaping my mind for a second. Swift NSUserdefaults. Standard user defaults. There we go. So this gets you a copy of the built-in defaults. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to say prefs dot, let's just do set integer, and we're going to say we're going to start off as 0 for key count. All right, and before we do that, what we're going to do is we're going to do let cur count equal prefs dot get, what is it, what, just value? Yeah, value for key count. And then we'll say if, well, let's just print it. Print cur count. All right. And then let's just set it to 5 here the second time around. Okay, so we're going to run our program. Very first time we come into our main screen inside of awake with context, it'll grab the current user defaults, which we always get that way. Then we're going to try to grab a variable named count from it that we haven't set yet the very first time through. Then I'm going to print that variable out. Then I'm going to actually set a value inside of my defaults called count, and I'm going to set it equal to 5. So the next time we run the program, we should actually get a 5 out of it. So first time, let's go look at this. We get a nil, no value in there. Then I've already added the 5, so I'll just run the program again. Okay, so I've read in count, which is currently nil. Then I've set count to be equal to 5. So I'll go ahead and run the program again now. There's my 5. All right, so what I can do is I can do something like this. I can say if cur count is not equal to nil, if that's a true statement, we're going to set cur count equal to cur count plus 1. Else, let's start it off at a 0. That'll get the ball rolling.
So if we update cur count, it won't update prefs.
Say this again.
If we update cur count itself to something else, it will not update the defaults.
Correct. Yeah, it's not linked. Okay, so I need to do this. I think it already is an int. As int. You won't have to do this for yours anyways, but just as a matter of point, just so we can show we can count. I think that should work. All right, so if it's not equal to nil, add 1 to whatever it currently is. If it is equal to nil, then it's the first time to start off as a 0. So every single time I run this now the next time it should be a 6. So 5 the very first time. Now it should be a 6 this next time. There's my 6, 7, 8, 9, so on and so forth. So what I'll do is I'll grab these 3 lines of code here. Well, I'll just grab that whole little structure there as an example of how NSUserdefaults works. So I want you to augment your program so that every single time you add a role, it remembers those roles. So that the next time you launch the application, those roles are already populated. Make sense?
Do we need to add a way to delete roles then or
Not yet. Yeah, just make sure your app can remember crap between roles. Between runs, rather. All right, I'll put that up on Blackboard.